Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I wanted to share some custom wood shelving that I have been working on. We have been making a lot of updates to our kitchen this summer, so I wanted to take you guys along, share some of the updates and this really fun custom project that made our kitchen feel so much better. If you are on Instagram, you can find me at Valerie Aguiar, where I share a lot of fun and behind the scenes there. Our wood, build these shelves. So I always love visiting the hobby wood section at Home Depot because I always get a ton of ideas there. So this is in the wrong place, but I will show you anyway. So this is a 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch, and then it's 3 feet long. So this is red oak. So I wish that I could use white oak, but Home Depot never has white oak in our store. So I'm fine with the red oak. It's pretty close once you sand it, or you could even whitewash it down a little bit to kind of get some of that reddish pinkish color out, but it's so very light, I'm okay with that. So I ended up grabbing enough for 3 shelves, and then I ended up going back because I decided I wanted to make 3 more. So I grabbed those little trim pieces, and then I did grab a 1x6 larger board. They can cut it to size there. And then also the red oak at Home Depot, they have you pay by the foot. So just be aware of how much you're gonna need, because sometimes it can get pricey if you need a lot of this type of wood, or even visiting like a local lumber yard is also a good option to weigh out some different prices. So I cut my wood down to the size that I would need inside the shelf, and then glued it together kind of like in a sandwich type way. I also subtracted the distance that my little trim pieces are going to be. So that was 1.5 inch on both sides, which is 3 inches total. So an update to our kitchen. This is what we had several weeks back. This is us removing our upper cabinets, which were a lot heavier than we had expected. So they ended up getting kind of like sandwiched. Yeah, I thought that was gonna fall on me. In between those 2 walls. It was really difficult to get this down just because it was like sandwiched in there. So we ended up getting it down. We had to cut it in half just to relieve some of that like tension, I think, that was in there. So yeah, we got it down, but it was definitely a 2-person project, but it was hands down one of the best decisions that we've ever made. It brings in so much more light to our kitchen, and now it has started more and more projects into the kitchen. So it's always something, right? But yeah, so once we took those down, there was kind of a lot of some little holes and some retexturing and some stuff that I was gonna have to patch up. So that is what we were left with. So that little gap right in there is where I wanted to add some custom shelving. It's really narrow on one side, and then you've got the cabinet on the other, so it really is kind of a little awkward space. So I thought some open shelving would be really cute and functional and pretty as well. So I am cutting down those boards that I glued together down to the exact size. They needed to be a little bit more narrow to fit that narrow side. So I'm cutting those down. I am using my miter saw. When I'm measuring out for those shelves, I also have to accommodate for the trim pieces that are going to be going on the sides and the front. I really didn't have to do them on the sides, but I almost wanted kind of like a border around, just because they're a little bit higher up. So you'll be able to see them from below, if that makes sense, like when you're sitting at our little bar. So I wanted to custom cut those trim pieces so that they kind of have that little border you'll see in a second. So with my miter saw, I'm going to change the angle to 45 degrees, which is super easy to do. And then I'm able to cut my trim piece just by placing it on its side. So I'm doing this 45-degree angle on all of my trim pieces, almost like a baseboard type, so that it wraps completely around that shelf. So here is the shelf all cut to size. I have it labeled number 1 because I have the boards in certain order that I want them to go on the wall. So these are the side pieces, so those will go on the sides, and then those are the longer back and front. So that's kind of the border that I was envisioning going around. So it just adds a little bit more interest. I really like kind of the visual interest like that. I think it's really cool. It reminds me of like a little puzzle, and then that wood grain is so gorgeous. So in the little nook that we have between the cabinet and the wall, I didn't want any nail holes showing or even wood filler, so I came up with a way to attach them to the wall. So I'm gonna do 3 sides with all the trim on and then leave that front piece off so I can get them on the wall and then attach them in and then add that front piece over top once everything is all nailed in and in there tight, if that makes sense. So this is what I will be screwing into the wall, and then I will add that last piece on once everything is nice and solid on there. I can add that front piece to hide everything, and then you'll never know how they're hanging, right? So I'm going to go in at an angle. I found my studs on the wall, so I have mapped those out and drawn a line where exactly they need to be hung. So I'm going to take some really long screws and go in at an angle. I'm going to pre-drill them just so I don't crack the wood at all, or yeah, it just makes it a lot easier. So when I pre-drill, I always like to go in a little bit straight, and then I will turn it. This is another close-up of what those screws are going to be doing. If you can imagine that being on the wall, the screw will go into the wood, come out, and then attach into the stud on the wall. So just another visual of how these are going to be hung. I definitely want to make sure that they're in a stud so that they can hold some weight. So this is the left-hand side that I'm working on right now. I had already finished the right-hand side in the little nook. This side was a little bit more challenging because it didn't have that little nook. It kind of had that open side on the left, so it was a little bit harder to hide those screws, but I figured it out. I just ended up leaving the 2 trim pieces off of the one side, so instead of gluing on just that front piece, I also had the side and the front, if that makes sense. So this is back to that little nook. So I used liquid nails to glue that front piece on, and then on the opposite side I used wood glue. So both worked well, no complaints or regrets at all. They both worked really good. So if you can see here, my wood did break a tiny bit right in that corner, so I was so disappointed that it had that little crack. So I still have to figure out if I'm just gonna leave it and put it behind, you know, a little plant or something. It's hardly noticeable. My husband didn't even notice, but I notice it's there. So yeah, I will figure out what I'm gonna do about that, or if I'm just gonna leave it. I'll probably just leave it, let's be honest. So once you get your adhesive on, your liquid nails or wood glue, you can use a clamp to hold it in place and secure it. And then of course it's the fun part, the decorating. So I could not even wait to get some fun stuff on these shelves. I will link all this stuff below if you guys are interested. But yeah, I just love that these are functional, they're pretty. It adds just a little bit more of that natural element into the kitchen, and now it's so much lighter and brighter without those cabinets up there. So we have a lot more coming. We have some cabinet refacing we're going to be working on soon. We have a refrigerator surround that I'm hoping to get done. So there are a lot more changes coming, a lot more DIYs, and as always, I like to keep it as budget friendly as possible. So I hope you guys will stick around, make sure that you're subscribed so that you can see all of our upcoming videos. And thank you guys so much for sticking around. We appreciate all the love and support. Don't forget to say hi in the comments, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.